It's Monday the 23rd of January 2023, and I just wanted to do an off the top of my head recap of where I think the housing market is now and where it's heading without getting into too many specifics. This is just purely the observations and all the assessments I'm making of all the factors and influences that affect the housing market. So it's just purely my opinion, and you can ignore it. Okay, it's fine. You can ignore anyone's opinion, but here we go. I posted a video yesterday about with a clip from a podcast I heard on Bloomberg where they were talking about UK house prices being overvalued 20% and 40% in the southeast, and how commercial properties is already down 17%, is going to come down another 10%. And they mentioned the phrase seller capitulation. We are in the seller capitulation phase, which is when we're waiting for sellers to accept. It's not that buyers won't pay your high asking prices, it's that they can't pay your high asking prices. That is the reason why there's a Mexican standoff, and it always happens this way when there's a pricing downturn. The sellers always wait, hoping that they're going to get lucky and that someone's going to come along off the asking price. And yes, of course, you get rare exceptions when that does happen. But in my view, unless you have an exceptional property that's rare as rocking horse poo, and you've got a queue of buyers for it that are all cashed up and totally immune to the cost of living crisis, in my view, most people and most properties that are sitting on the market at too high a price are waiting in vain, and it's a massive mistake. So the longer you wait, the lower price you will get, generally speaking. That's my view. If you're a seller who needs to sell, as opposed to someone who doesn't need to sell but would like to, right? If you're a seller who needs to sell, I cannot stress enough that the faster you move, the better. I was with someone yesterday, and even after everything someone I know really well, a family member, and after everything that I've explained, they still were under the impression that there was a property that just won't sell. And they wouldn't hear the message that, no, it's because they just won't drop the price. It will sell. If it's not selling, it's because the price is too high. There's no other reason. There's really no other reason. And slowly but surely, more and more sellers are coming to that realization that actually, okay, the market's turned, and if we want to sell, we're going to have to act fast. And so in January, we are seeing the very beginnings of the seller capitulation phase. That's going to take a few months to roll out across the country. And it's probably going to start earliest in the southeast and finish, the latest place to catch up is going to be the northwest. That's just based on the graph of house price changes year on year that we're seeing. Gives you a rough idea of where's coming down earliest and soonest and fastest. And to people saying, well, hang on a second, how come it's the sellers that are wrong? Why aren't the buyers wrong? You know, why should the sellers be the ones to move? Why can't the buyers be the ones to move? You're missing the point that purchasing power of first-time buyers, who are the primary source of demand in the market, has been reduced by something that they're borrowing with mortgages because of interest rates, has been reduced by about 30%, roughly. More in some cases, less than others, but roughly speaking, 30%. That is not their choice. It is not their fault. It is completely out of anyone's control. And so when the base level of demand of the property market has had its purchasing power reduced by 30%, it is just a mathematical certainty that that's going to feed into house prices and go up the chain. And so anyone who's sitting on a property thinking, well, I'm going to get last year's prices or 5% off last year's prices, I'm afraid you're smoking something funny if that's what you think. But it's also the big surprise is just how slowly this reality is sinking in, and it's frustrating for buyers. I get messages every day from people saying we're making offers, and they're good offers. They are offers that are below asking price, yes, but they're still reasonable offers in the current market, and the sellers are still sitting on their hands. But I'm starting to see more and more agents talking about having tough conversations with their unrealistic selling clients and saying, look, if you don't drop your price, you're going to need to find another agent to sell. And that's going to, I think, jolt a lot of sellers into waking up and getting more realistic with their price. So if you are one of those sellers who's sitting there wondering why your property isn't selling and maybe blaming the agent for not selling it, which may or may not be fair, but and wondering how to get it sold, there's only one answer, which is to drop the price. And the key is to drop the price not down to where the market is, but down to just below where the market is now, so that those buyers that are there jump at it. I had a message from someone yesterday, a buyer saying, property came on the market. I thought, great, realistically priced property. Went around there. They then had a bunch of people viewing it and they had multiple offers straight away. So the housing market still functions, but only at realistic prices. Okay, so, unfortunately, if you're a first-time buyer, when houses come on the market that are priced realistically, they are still selling fast, as you'd expect. But they are in the minority. And I had a comment from a chap called, I think his name is Richard Lavelle, on Twitter last night, who's been working in the property industry for 50 years, and he's an investor and everything else. And he said, the property market is cyclical, and when it reaches this part of the cycle, the best thing to do is to get the pain over quickly. Drop your prices, get it sold. And he's absolutely right. So for frustrated buyers out there, be patient. It's coming. If you're making offers, put your offer there, leave it on the table. You'll, as often as not, you'll get a phone call back a week or 2 weeks later. I'm getting messages every day about that story happening. And the silly thing is that sometimes those buyers are going, you know what, 2 weeks later, actually, I've changed my mind. If they'd taken my offer when I made it, I would have gone ahead. But now I think they're being more and more unrealistic, and actually I don't want to pay that much anymore. And so if you're a seller that gets an offer, don't make the mistake of taking too long to make a decision to accept it, because it might go away. But as ever, if you're watching this and thinking, well, hang on, okay, I hear what's happening in the market, but actually I think my property's worth more, the only person that can really tell you honestly is an estate agent who has been through downturns before. And if I was selling a property now, I would only be considering agents who had been through a downturn before, or agents that were being ultra realistic and not blowing any sunshine up my arse about how good the market is. Now, to an agent, a good market just means a market that's functioning. It doesn't even matter what the prices are doing. It means that the fact that there are deals happening. And good agents are getting that done. Good agents are managing sellers' expectations correctly, and they're registering buyers, and they're looking after proceedable buyers, and they're getting deals done, okay? But those good agents are in the minority, and most agents are sitting at their desks watching tumbleweed blow past the windows at the moment. I've heard some really quite shocking stories. I had a couple of anecdotes yesterday of agents just going, it's like the Gobi Desert. There's just nothing happening. There are no buyers. We can't get the buyers. The buyers are there. The buyers are registering with the good agents. They are in much smaller numbers. Deals are happening. People are moving, but they are in much smaller numbers. And my prediction, it is a prediction, and I'm happy to be wrong about this, but this is my prediction as we are in the middle of January 2023, late January 2023, is that when the official house price figures come out to reflect what's happening in January, we will see that January and February and March are going to be when the steepest falls were happening. I don't know how long it's going to go on. It's really difficult to tell how long it's going to take for reality to bite. But right now, my assessment of what's happening and the data that's out there, what you can see, if you interpret it correctly and take off your rose-tinted spectacles, prices are in free fall. Like the average prices are in free fall, which means that there are exceptions, yes, but on average prices, I think you're going to see that this house price market correction, whatever you want to call it, correction, crash, fall, drop, reversal, is going to be one of the sharpest and steepest, if not the steepest, house price falls on record. That's what I think is happening. Now, why do I think that's happening? The one thing that all of the over-optimistic people are missing is that Britain is in the grip of the worst cost of living crisis, the worst reduction in living standards on record ever. That means that on average, more people are having more of their buying power taken away than ever before. Think about what that means. The country as a whole, yes, of course, you know people that are, and yes, of course, there are some companies giving 15% pay rises. That's great, but that's not representative of the whole country. And the data that represents the whole country is saying that people's earnings are being eroded by inflation faster than at any time before, ever. And that's only just starting. And that's going to go on for the whole of 2023. So what do you think it means for people's buying power on the whole, on the housing market as a whole, when as a country, our buying power, the value of our wages, the value of our disposable income, the amount of our disposable income as a country, as a whole, is being reduced faster than ever before? And there's no sign of that turning around this year. Even if energy prices come down and all the rest of it, there's no sign of it turning around, because inflation is this invisible destroyer of value. Okay? And so when the whole country as a whole is experiencing the worst cost of living crisis and reduction in living standards ever, how can that not translate into, even if you ignore interest rates, how can that not translate into a weaker housing market, right? It's just maths. It's not even opinion. It's just maths. And eventually I think this will hit the rental market too. I don't know exactly at what point, but at some point in the next year or two, I think a lot of people who've been renting as a nice to have and who are losing their jobs are going to be moving out, moving back in with their parents, moving in with friends, doubling up, whatever it takes. Because if you can't pay your rent, you can't pay your rent. And so I think that although rents are very strong right now and continuing to be very strong right now, I think that's going to change. Because it can't not. People can't afford it if their income is being eroded so badly. So that's my view. I think that one reason more than any other is why house prices are going to fall sharper than at any other time previously. I think this house price crash, correction, fall, whatever you want to call it, will be sharper than 2008 by a long way, sharper than the 89-90 one, and maybe even sharper than the 1970s one. Why? Because inflation. Why? Because interest rates. It's just, there's just no good news. I mean, yes, you hear talk of, China has released COVID restrictions so that their economy is going to bounce back. Well, that increases inflation, right? If China does come back strong, and the Chinese economy bounces up, that's going to increase inflation for the rest of the world. So good news if you're waiting in the sidelines to buy, I think, as long as you're patient. Not good news if you are needing to sell without upsizing. Not good news if you are in the moving industry. I think the moving industry is going to be seeing probably one of the worst years it's ever seen. I hope it doesn't. I deeply, deeply hope that that's not the case. I would be very happy to be wrong about the moving industry itself suffering this year. I just can't see any other way around it. And I'm an optimist. I'm going to end on that point, right? I'm an optimist, and this is what I'm seeing. So sorry to be the bearer of not good news if you're working in the industry. My tip is to get ahead of the market, get ahead of your competitors, get ahead of the industry. If you're a seller, get ahead of the mass group of sellers that's about to come crashing down on price. Get ahead of it. If you're an estate agent, get ahead of your competitors. If you are a new homes seller, get ahead of the market. Stop with all these silly incentives that just require your buyers to borrow more money to pay for the incentives. Just drop your prices. Get ahead of your competitors. That's the smart thing to do. Anyway, I've been rambling for too long. Have a great Monday, guys. See you soon.